Obscure City is a place where you can find many unique dangers. This is where she works, Cassandra Killjoy, paranormal private eye. Now a teenage girl's father has gone missing, and Killjoy believes that the city's enigmatic protector, the swordsman, is the key to finding him. So Killjoy must face many deadly dangers in her search for the swordsman. Available on Amazon.com. After a stellar run from the late 70s and through the 80s, Star Wars, both live action and animated, just ended. And for a while there we thought that that was it. That was all there was to it. Until the turn of the millennium, when the wars returned. And with them, they brought a new hope. Greetings fanboys and fangirls, I'm Erod and I'm the Blockbuster Buster, and welcome back to a look back at Star Wars Animated. When we last left off, the unprecedented success of Star Wars in the late 70s led to the production of the Star Wars Holiday Special, which might have created a rift between the fans, critics, and George Lucas, but still marked the beginning of Lucasfilm's partnership with Nelvana, which led to the first ever televised Star Wars-based animated shows. Droids, The Adventures of R2-D2 and C-3PO, and Star Wars Ewoks, later retitled the all-new Ewoks. But after a brief 2 years, these shows ended, and Star Wars Animated would go dormant for over a decade. And thus, our story picks up in the early 2000s.
The Force is strong with this one.
We were 2 episodes into the highly divisive prequel trilogy, and the final episode, The Revenge of the Sith, was on the horizon. George Lucas wanted something to bridge episodes 2 and 3, something that would give the audience a more in-depth look at the Clone Wars and help sell Attack of the Clones toys that weren't selling very well. Enter Genndy Tartakovsky, the creator of Dexter's Laboratory and Samurai Jack, who was chosen for this project for his striking, eclectic visual storytelling style. The plan was to produce a series of 25 animated shorts that would detail key events in the Clone Wars. Each short would premiere on Cartoon Network right before their primetime lineup, then would be available to watch as a VOD on the Cartoon Network website, and to download on the official Clone Wars website, which is an awesome plan to produce content and get it to your audience. However, there was one little itty-bitty little problem. Genndy Tartakovsky was really busy at the time. He was still producing Samurai Jack, developing a potential 3rd series for Cartoon Network, and lobbying to direct his first animated feature. It was at this particular insanely busy juncture in his life that George Lucas called him and offered him the job. Any sane person would have said no, but as Genndy explains, in the animation world, opportunities like this don't come twice, and when George Lucas calls you, you don't say no. Knowing how busy Genndy and his team were at the time makes it all the more impressive how freaking good this microseries is, as each chapter is like a mini movie, exciting, impactful, and epic. Not to mention that the series subtly plays tribute to past installments of Star Wars Animated. Like for example, they use extremely similar designs for C-3PO and R2-D2. We see an appearance by a Duloc, which is a species that was introduced in Star Wars Ewoks. And additionally, most of the 3rd season takes place on a planet called Nelvana, which of course is an overt reference to Nelvana, the animation studio that produced all Star Wars animation from the late 70s and through the 80s. The microseries also featured an amazing cast, including Anthony Daniels reprising the role of C-3PO, making him the only actor to reprise his role from the movies as well as the original Star Wars animated shows. Cree Summer, who's the only actor to have worked on droids, Ewoks, and the modern Star Wars cartoons, Andre Soglioso, Matt Lucas, Gray DeLisle, Nick Jameson, Darren Norris, John DiMaggio, and Kevin Michael Richardson, as well as some actors who would go on to be the definitive voices of these characters, like James Arnold Taylor as Obi-Wan Kenobi, Tom Kane as Yoda, Corey Burton as Count Dooku, and T.C. Carson as Mace Windu. While fans and critics remain divided over the quality of the Star Wars prequel trilogy, Genndy Tartakovsky's Clone Wars microseries is universally praised. Not only has it received positive reviews from both critics and fans, but it has won multiple awards, including the Saturn Award for Best Animated Series on Television, the BMI Award for Best Streaming Series, the PGA Award for Outstanding Children's Programming, the IGN Award for Best TV Animated Series, and the Primetime Emmy for Outstanding Animated Program. And at a time when fans just kept complaining and outright hating Star Wars, this was a huge deal. Not only did we have a quality Star Wars show that we all agreed on, but it also gave us some pivotal moments in the franchise, such as the first appearance of Sith apprentice Asajj Ventress, originally voiced by Grey DeLisle. We also see Anakin Skywalker's knighting ceremony, his first foray into the dark side, as well as the introduction of Episode 3 baddie, General Grievous, who is 10 billion times more badass in the micro-series than he is in the movies. Also, in the micro-series, his voice is much cooler.
Your training has served me well.
In the movies, he sounds like Evil Incarnate.
General Kenobi!
Hello there. Suffice it to say, the micro-series was a massive success, critically praised, highly rated, and most importantly, unlike the previous cartoons, this one was moving merch. So much so that it became pivotal to keep the momentum going and continue producing animated projects to keep selling toys. The problem was that Genndy had fulfilled his contract and delivered what he promised. And now he, Paul Rudish, and the rest of the crew were back to focusing on the half-dozen projects they were working on before they added Clone Wars to their slate. So in a very unexpected move, Lucasfilm shifted their game plan from an animated series to an animated feature.
The Force reawakens.
Enter Star Wars Clone Wars, the animated movie, which was not meant to be a movie. Basically, after the success of the micro-series, the plan was to shift to a half-hour weekly animated series that was a full in-depth account of the Clone Wars. But since Genndy Tartakovsky was no longer available, it was time to bring in another crazy ambitious artist to helm the project. Enter the patron saint of modern Star Wars, Dave Filoni. Fresh off of the success of working on Avatar: The Last Airbender, Uncle Dave was contacted by Lucasfilm president Kathleen Kennedy. Now, Dave Filoni is a massive Star Wars fan, so he's well aware who Kathleen Kennedy is. So when she called him, he thought it was a prank. Hell, even after he attended the job interview and met George Lucas, he still thought it was a joke, and there was no way that they were offering him a Star Wars franchise. But it wasn't a joke, and now Dave Filoni was in charge of the next era of Star Wars media, to carry on the legacy after the movies, working at Skywalker Ranch and collaborating with Star Wars legends like Ben Burtt. And thus, a team was assembled and production started on the first Star Wars animated series to be produced entirely in-house, as well as the first installment of the franchise to be fully computer animated. George Lucas was so impressed with the first batch of completed footage that it was he who made the executive decision to produce an animated feature instead, which made the producers of the show very nervous, as they didn't feel that the show was feature quality. However, their distributor, Warner Brothers, who at the time owned the Star Wars cartoons, was very excited by the prospect of distributing a Star Wars movie, a distinction that was previously only held by 20th Century Fox. And once Warner Brothers was on board, there was no going back. The animated series had now become a feature. Howard Ruffman, president of Lucas Licensing, said the following: "Sometimes George works in strange ways." So in actuality, Clone Wars the animated movie is the first 4 episodes of Clone Wars the animated series edited together. The episodes would have been The New Padawan, Castle of Deception, Castle of Doom, and Castle of Salvation. And thus the 4 episodes were stitched together and released as a feature, which would go on to be the biggest failure in the history of the franchise. Not only did Clone Wars the animated movie garner mostly negative reviews from both critics and fans, but it would go on to gross a mere $68 million globally, making it the lowest grossing Star Wars movie of all time. Now, before we get into why this movie didn't work, let's get into some positives first. First of all, this movie holds the distinction of introducing Dave Filoni's greatest contribution to the Star Wars franchise, Ahsoka Tano. the ultra badass former Jedi and breakout star of the animated franchise, played by her universe founder Ashley Eckstein, and the titular character of her own Disney Plus series, in which she is played by Rosario Dawson. So whether you like it or not, Clone Wars the animated movie is still essential Star Wars viewing. The movie follows Ahsoka as she is first assigned to be Anakin Skywalker's Padawan, smack dab in the middle of negotiations to gain exclusive passage through a quadrant of space owned and controlled by the Hutt family. The negotiations are aggravated when Jabba the Hutt's son is kidnapped by separatists. So Anakin and Ahsoka must learn to work together to save the young Huttling and secure the deal. So, is this movie that bad? No it isn't. So what's the problem? Basically that it's just not a movie. The animation is good, it's just not feature good. And the writing is fine, it's just not 3-act feature fine. It's just painfully apparent that this was not meant to go to theaters. But if you watch it with the knowledge that it is the pilot to the Clone Wars animated series, I guarantee you that you will appreciate it more. Now, if you still find the quality of the writing and the animation to be questionable, the one thing that we can still all agree on is that the casting and voiceover are great. Samuel L. Jackson, Anthony Daniels, and Sir Christopher Lee all reprised their roles from the movies. James Arnold Taylor, Tom Kane, and Corey Burton reprised their roles from the micro-series. And not only were we introduced to Ashley Eckstein as Ahsoka Tano, but we were also introduced to more actors who would go on to be the definitive voices of these characters, like Matt Lanter as Anakin Skywalker, D. Bradley Baker as the Clone Troopers, Ian Abercrombie as Chancellor Palpatine, and Catherine Tabor as Padme Amidala. But all of my praise still doesn't change the fact that this movie's failure still represents a major stain on the tapestry of Star Wars, and back when it was first released, it was hated by the fans. And that most of the hatred was centered on the character of Ahsoka Tano. Now, while I do agree that the character is a bit abrasive in this movie, I still feel like the character didn't deserve the level of negativity that she initially received, as I completely understood what the creators were going for. Anakin is a rebellious, rule-breaking wild card, so who better to be his Padawan than someone who's a bigger rebel and a bigger wild card than him? So from my point of view, I could completely see the trajectory of their relationship, from a couple of egotistical show-offs trying to outdo one another to a cohesive droid fighting machine. Unfortunately, the rest of the fanbase didn't see it that way. So Ahsoka, undeservingly, became the second most hated Star Wars character right after Jar Jar Binks. But you know who loves Ahsoka Tano? George Lucas. At this point, Cartoon Network had already picked up the Clone Wars series, so there was no stopping the show in spite of the movie's failure. And whether the fans liked it or not, Ahsoka was going to be one of the central characters. So on our next look back at Star Wars Animated, we will see how Dave Filoni and his team turned one of Star Wars' biggest failures into one of their biggest successes, and how they endured when a new all-powerful empire took over the galaxy.